We used an advanced AI system to create two opposing thinkers. One is an atheist, the other believes in God. We placed them in a direct face-to-face debate to confront one of humanity's oldest and most difficult questions: does God exist? Each side will argue without interruptions. Their reasoning will be evaluated by multiple independent AI models acting as judges. Watch closely, listen carefully, and don't skip ahead to the verdict. The debate begins now.
Let me start with something so basic that we often ignore it: the fact that anything exists at all. Look around you. Look at the stars, the planets, the trees, the animals, the human mind capable of asking this very question. All of this came from somewhere. And when you trace it back, you have to ask a simple question: why is there something rather than nothing? Science can explain how things change, how stars form, how life evolves, but science cannot explain why the universe exists in the first place. There's no experiment that answers that. There is no equation that tells us why reality is here instead of empty darkness forever. The atheist will say the universe just is, that it needs no explanation, but that is not an answer. That is giving up on the question. Everything we observe in daily life has a cause. Your chair was made by someone. Your house was built by someone. The food you eat was grown from something. We live in a world of causes and effects, and yet when we get to the biggest question of all, the origin of everything, we are supposed to believe it just happened for no reason. That does not make sense. The existence of a creator, a mind behind reality, is the most logical explanation for why anything exists. Not a random accident, not a mindless explosion, but intention, purpose, design. When you look at the complexity of a single living cell, when you study the fine-tuning of physical constants that allow life to exist, when you consider the fact that human beings can think about truth, beauty, and morality, you are not looking at chaos. You are looking at order, and order comes from intelligence. God is the best explanation for why the universe exists, why it is ordered, and why we are here to ask these questions. This is not blind faith. This is following the evidence where it leads.
That was a lot of confidence for an argument that has a massive hole in the middle. You said everything needs a cause. Fine, then what caused God? If everything that exists needs an explanation, then God needs one too. And if you say God does not need a cause, then you have just admitted that not everything needs a cause, which means the universe might not need one either. You cannot use the rule when it helps you and then throw it away when it hurts you. That is not logic, that is convenience. You talk about the universe being ordered, about fine-tuning, about complexity, but you are making a classic mistake. You are looking at the result and assuming it was intended. Imagine a puddle of water sitting in a hole in the ground. The puddle might think, wow, this hole is perfectly shaped to fit me. It must have been designed for me. But of course, that is backwards. The puddle fits the hole because it formed inside it. We are not here because the universe was made for us. We are here because we adapted to the universe we happen to be in. If the conditions were different, we would not be here to notice. That is not design. That is selection. And when you talk about complexity, you ignore the fact that we have explanations for it. Evolution explains how simple things become complex over billions of years. We do not need a designer to explain life. We need time, variation, and natural selection. These are not guesses. They are supported by mountains of evidence. The real question is this: why assume a God at all? You are adding something huge to your picture of reality, an all-powerful, invisible mind, and you have not shown any direct evidence for it. Feelings of wonder are not evidence. Gaps in our knowledge are not evidence. God is not an answer. God is a way of avoiding the hard work of actually finding answers.
You just made my point for me. You said if the conditions were different, we would not be here to notice. That is exactly the problem. The conditions are not different. They are precisely what they need to be. The strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the expansion rate of the universe. Change any of these by a tiny fraction and no stars form, no planets exist, no life is possible. You are standing in a universe that is balanced on a razor's edge, and your explanation is luck. Let me put it another way. Imagine you are about to be executed by a firing squad. 50 trained soldiers aim at you and fire. Every single one of them misses. Would you just shrug and say, well, if they had not missed, I would not be here to wonder about it? Of course not. You would demand an explanation, because the odds against it are so extreme that luck is not a reasonable answer. That is where we are with the universe. The odds against this exact configuration happening by chance are beyond anything we can imagine, and your answer is, we're just lucky. That is not science. That is faith in randomness. Now, let us talk about evolution. I am not denying that life changes over time. The evidence for that is strong. But evolution explains how life develops once it exists. It does not explain how life started in the first place. The origin of the first living cell with its DNA, its proteins, its molecular machines is not explained by natural selection. You cannot select something that does not exist yet. Where did that first cell come from? How did non-living chemicals arrange themselves into something that could copy itself and respond to its environment? That is not a small gap in knowledge. That is a canyon. And until science can cross it, the idea of intelligent design is not irrational. It is reasonable.
You keep pointing to things we do not fully understand yet and saying, therefore, God. That is called the God of the gaps, and it is a losing strategy. Every time in history that we did not understand something, people said God did it. Lightning, God. Disease, God. Earthquakes, God. And every time, science eventually found the real answer. No gods required. You are betting that this time will be different, that this gap will never be filled. History is not on your side. But let me go further. Even if I granted you that the universe looks designed, even if I admitted that life seems too complex to be random, that still would not prove your God. It would not prove a loving God, a personal God, a God who cares about humans, a God who answers prayers. At best, it would prove some kind of cosmic architect who set things up and walked away. Deism, not Christianity, not Islam, not Judaism. You are not just arguing for a creator, you are smuggling in a whole package of beliefs that do not follow from your argument. And here is the uncomfortable part. If there is a God who designed this universe, then God also designed childhood cancer. God designed parasites that eat children's eyes. God designed a world where millions suffer and die in agony for no apparent reason. You want to talk about design? Then own all of it. Do not just point to sunsets and butterflies, point to the horrors too. Because if this universe is designed, it is designed by someone who either cannot stop suffering or does not care to. That is not a God worth worshiping. That is a God worth questioning.
You want to talk about suffering? Let us talk about suffering. You just made a moral argument against God. You said suffering is wrong, that it should not exist, that a good God would not allow it. But here is my question. Where does that moral standard come from? If there is no God, if we are just animals that evolved on a random planet in a meaningless universe, then why is suffering wrong? Animals suffer all the time. Lions eat zebras alive. Parasites kill their hosts. Nature is brutal from top to bottom. If we are just part of nature, why do we think it should be different for us? You are borrowing from a worldview you reject. You are using the idea that there is a way things ought to be, that some things are really wrong, not just unpleasant, but morally wrong. But if there is no God, there is no ought. There is only what is. Evolution does not care about fairness. Evolution does not care about justice. It cares about survival. If morality is just a feeling our brains developed to help us cooperate, then it has no more authority than a preference for chocolate over vanilla. You cannot stand on moral ground that your worldview has already removed. Now let me turn this back on you. You say science will eventually fill the gaps, but that is also faith. You do not know that science will explain consciousness. You do not know that science will explain the origin of life. You're trusting that someday, somewhere, an answer will appear that does not involve God. How is that different from religious faith? You mock belief, but you have your own beliefs. You just don't call them that. At least I'm honest about mine.
You want to know more about morality without God? Fine. It comes from us, from our ability to feel pain and recognize it in others, from the fact that we are social creatures who need cooperation to survive. We do not need a cosmic lawgiver to understand that causing unnecessary suffering is harmful to individuals and to societies. Morality is not handed down from above, it is built from below, through experience, empathy, and reason. And honestly, that makes it more meaningful, not less, because we choose to be good, not because we are threatened with punishment or promised reward. You ask where the standard comes from? I ask you back. If God commanded something horrible, would it become good just because God said so? If God told you to kill an innocent child, would that be moral? If you say no, then you are admitting that you have a standard outside of God that you use to judge God's commands. And if you say yes, then your morality is not about goodness at all. It is just obedience. Now, about faith in science. You're confusing two very different things. I do not have faith that science will answer every question. I have confidence based on a track record. Science has explained lightning, disease, the age of the earth, the origin of species, the structure of the atom, and 1,000 other things that used to be mysteries. It works. It corrects itself. It makes predictions that come true. Religion does none of those things. Believing that a method that has worked over and over will keep working is not the same as believing in something with no evidence. That is not faith. That is trust built on results.
Let me step back and lay this out clearly. You trust science because it has explained physical things, lightning, disease, atoms. I do not deny that. But there are questions science is not equipped to answer. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does the universe follow laws at all? Why are those laws understandable by human minds? These are not scientific questions. They are philosophical questions. Science assumes that nature is orderly and that our minds can grasp that order. But science cannot explain why that is true. It just takes it for granted. I am asking you to think about what science itself depends on. The universe behaves according to rational mathematical laws. Our minds, which evolved to survive on an African savanna, happen to be capable of understanding quantum physics in distant galaxies. Why? On atheism, this is a happy accident. On theism, it makes perfect sense. We are made in the image of a rational God, and the universe reflects that rationality. That is not a gap. That is a framework. And here's the thing. Billions of people across every culture and time period have reported experiences of the divine, not just feelings, encounters, transformations, lives changed in ways they cannot explain. You can dismiss all of that as delusion or brain chemistry, but when the same phenomenon appears everywhere, across every society, every era, maybe it is pointing to something real. Maybe the experience of God is as basic as the experience of love or beauty. You cannot prove those in a lab either, but we do not call them illusions. You are asking for a kind of evidence that the question does not require. Some truths are known through reason, some are known through experience, and some are known through trust. That does not make them less true. It makes them human.
You just said it yourself. Some truths are known through trust. That is the problem. You are asking me to trust without verification. You are asking me to accept claims based on feelings, experiences, and traditions that cannot be tested. People in every culture have believed things that turned out to be wrong. Every culture has had its gods, its spirits, its creation stories. They cannot all be right, but they can all be wrong. The fact that belief is widespread does not make it true. It just means that humans are very good at believing things. Our brains are pattern-seeking machines. We see faces in clouds. We hear voices in static. We find meaning in randomness. That is not evidence of God. That is evidence of how our minds work. And when you say the universe is rational and our minds can understand it, you are describing a feature of reality that we can study. But calling it evidence of a divine mind is a leap. You are adding a layer that is not necessary. If the universe is rational, maybe that is just what reality is. Maybe asking why is like asking what is north of the North Pole. The question sounds meaningful, but it might not have an answer. I am not claiming to have all the answers. I am claiming that honest uncertainty is better than confident mythology. You say I cannot prove love or beauty in a lab. True, but I also do not claim they come from a supernatural being. I accept them as experiences produced by brains shaped by evolution. You want to call that reductive, I call it honest. I do not need to invent an invisible being to feel awe at the universe. I feel awe because the universe is genuinely awesome, and it does not need a creator to be that way.
Here is where we stand. You have offered me a universe that came from nothing, for no reason, governed by laws that have no explanation, producing minds that can understand those laws by accident, generating a sense of morality that has no foundation, and inspiring billions of people with experiences that are all delusions. And you call that the rational position. I call it a house built on air. Every explanation you give pushes the question one step back without answering it. Where did the laws of physics come from? You say they just are. Where did life come from? You say science will figure it out. Where does meaning come from? You say we make it up. At some point, you have to stop and ask if you are actually explaining anything or just refusing to follow the trail to its end. I am not saying belief is easy. I am not saying there are no hard questions. The problem of suffering is real. The silence of God can be painful. But difficulty is not disproof. The deepest truths often require the most trust. I believe because when I look at existence, I see intention. When I look at consciousness, I see soul. When I look at love, I see the fingerprint of something greater than chemistry. I believe because the alternative, that all of this is an accident with no meaning, no purpose, no direction, does not match the world I experience. And I believe because across every age and every land, human beings have reached towards something beyond themselves. That is not a mistake. That is a clue. You can call it faith. I call it the most reasonable response to reality as it actually is.
You say I am building on air. I say you are building on wishes. You want the universe to have meaning, so you invent a source of meaning. You want death to not be the end, so you invent an afterlife. You want justice to exist, so you invent a judge. I understand the appeal, but wanting something to be true does not make it true. I am not offering you comfort, I am offering you honesty. I do not know why the universe exists, I do not know if we will ever know, but I refuse to fill that gap with a story just because the silence is uncomfortable.
You point to billions of believers as evidence, but belief is not determined by truth. It is determined by culture, by upbringing, by emotional need. People believe because they were raised to believe, because their community believes, because belief gives them something to hold on to. That is not evidence of God. That is evidence of humanity's deep fear of meaninglessness. I am not afraid of that. I would rather live in a universe that is indifferent and honest than in one that is designed and cruel. Because if your God is real, then your God made a world filled with suffering, watched it happen, and did nothing. That is not love. That is abandonment. You asked me earlier where morality comes from. I say it comes from us, and that makes it precious, because it is ours. We built it. We can improve it. We do not need permission from the sky. I do not need a God to live a meaningful life. I do not need eternal reward to be kind, and I do not need a creator to feel wonder. The universe is enough, and if it turns out I am wrong, I will have lived honestly, without pretending to know what I do not know.
The debate has concluded. Using predefined criteria focused on logic, clarity, and argument strength, the believer received 397 points, and the atheist received 417 points. Based on this framework, the atheist presented the stronger overall case in this debate. This result does not determine absolute truth. It only reflects how the arguments performed under this specific evaluation model. Now, we turn to you. Which arguments resonated with you most, and why? Did this debate challenge any of your assumptions, or reinforce them? Share your thoughts in the comments. The conversation doesn't end here.